Hello and welcome to Autistic FM. My name is Haje. I use he, him pronouns, and I will be whacking our way through the jungle with a machete in this journey that we call this podcast, as apparently these metaphors get weirder and weirder. You can subscribe to Autistic FM wherever you get your podcast, and it would be really awesome if you did. That's how we grow, and that's how we get to thrive. Over on our website at autistic.fm, you can find episode transcripts and additional information. We also have discussion threads for each individual episode, a neurospicy discussion forum, and much more. All of that is free. If you become a supporter for as little as $5 a month, you can get a sneak preview of the topics we have coming up and even submit questions for our future guests. You can also add topics to our future topics wish list, and you get access to a supporters-only discussion group. We have a bunch of additional supporters-only treats coming up, so please stay tuned. In this episode of the podcast, I am joined by Kim McIntyre, a specialist in self-regulation and energy healing. Kim's personal journey of how, after a series of head injuries and a challenging divorce, they transformed their life by learning to harvest their energy for self-healing. Kim is passionate about helping others find their balance, and in this episode actually did some really good work with me, which is kind of weird to listen back to be honest. Our conversation touches the concept of muscle testing, the significance of chakras, and how all of these practices can aid in self-regulation, especially for those who feel disconnected from their bodies and, well, autistic folks. I do want to add a quick trigger warning. We do touch on some pretty sensitive topics, including some anger issues, suicide, and a few other topics. Again, we don't really go into graphic detail in this episode, but please do look after yourself and listen accordingly. As a special treat for if you listen all the way to the end of the episode, I will start adding one of my favorite facts, like right at the end. So, you have that to look forward to. Until then, let's roll tape and listen to what Kim has to say. Hello, dear guest. I am eager to get started with you and to hear all the wonderful things you have to say. Would you start by sharing your name and pronouns, please?
My name is Kim McIntyre, and it's just Kim McIntyre, no pronouns.
Thank you. And where in the world are you?
About an hour south of Reno, Nevada. So I'm up north in Nevada.
Oh, that's wonderful. Then I know exactly where you are.
Yeah.
I'm curious. We actually had a false start on the recording, so I'm like, oh, this is thrown for a little bit of a loop. But you're the expert at this. How would you deal with this? Like, I'm a little dysregulated. I'm a little flustered.
Okay.
Do you have any advice for me?
Find your breath. And while you breathe for a minute, and then notice the breath you just took. That's a stress breath. Okay. Mm-hmm. Feel your chair underneath your pelvis and imagine your lungs connect down there. Breathe into your pelvis. We don't need these muscles in your neck. There you go. And notice your head kind of tightened up a little bit. Your head's not really used to breathing that way. So continue breathing that way, and then you can do yourself a favor and rub on your hand right here. And that'll help you talk to your subconscious. Don't poke and press. Rub. Be gentle with yourself, and then relax those other fingers on the hand that you're rubbing. There you go. And then go ahead and relax your hand down in your hip and down into your pelvis. There you go. And that's helping you talk to your subconscious. We're not just doing it to calm yourself down. We're doing it to literally create a change between your subconscious self and your conscious self. To let your subconscious know, I don't have to flip out when things go wrong. I might get a little anxious, but I can catch myself, find my breath, bring my system back down, and, oh, I'm okay. And you might notice some tingling in your legs right now. Can you feel that?
Yeah, my toes.
Yes, that's the energy coming in, and that's the transition that you're already beginning to make. And these are the things that I've been practicing for myself for 23 years, but because of all the head injuries and because of other things in my life, it didn't take hold as well as it has within the past 18 months. In the past 18 months, everything has changed for me. 24 months, one of those things being divorce. Was it 24? It seems like 2 years. I don't know.
Sometime.
Yeah. But
Kim, thank you.
Tool.
What a
You're very
wonderful
welcome.
way to start a podcast interview.
Good.
What the listeners don't know is that we were meant to record a couple of days ago, and I was
Mhm.
feeling so fantastically dysregulated that I ended up canceling 2 of the podcasting episodes.
Mhm.
And even in that moment, you were like, "Well, maybe that's a good time to actually do it." I was like, "Oh, that feels really vulnerable." And
Mhm.
so I said no, but I sat with it later. I was like, "Wait, why am I doing this podcast if not being vulnerable?" And so a little piece of me is actually happy that our first 2 minutes of the recording didn't work out so well, because we actually got to have a brief moment of practicing what you preach.
Wonderful. You're so welcome, and thanks for letting me do that because I enjoy doing it. Yes, I
Mm-hmm.
attempt to support myself doing this, but it's still when I see your eyes just relax and it's like now we can have a civilized conversation.
Yeah, I don't know if I reached for civilized, but dropped in, I think is
Right.
I took in for civil.
That was the quotes.
I love it. So what we started talking about just before we took this little re-record break was you were telling me how you discovered your path to neurodivergence, and I would love to hear it again.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, it was a summer day, and I was laying out on the grass, not having the best day, overwhelmed and such. And my wife at the time came home, and she sat down next to me, which was not normal. And she told me, "I think you might have Asperger's." She'd been doing some research, and it didn't mean anything to me because I didn't understand it, and I hadn't connected to her yet. And she said it again, and I felt a warm sensation run through my body. And I'm also empathic and psychic, a little psychotic sometimes, but psychic. And when I noticed that warm sensation, kind of like you felt the tingling, it meant okay, this is actually a true statement. She's just not trying to figure out something else that's wrong with me, right? And so she actually scheduled an appointment with a psychologist or psychiatrist or whatever it was, and that's when I got the diagnosis. So
Yeah.
that was huge because some of the things with Asperger's go the same way as some of the things with concussions. And I've had quite a few of those guys too. And then being such the empath that I am, feeling everything around me, when I feel um, imbalance outside of myself and I don't know how to control that, the dysregulation just goes through the roof. I mean, I've actually ran out of a grocery store aisleway once because two people were coming towards me, and I don't want to be like this.
Mm-hmm.
It's not fun.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so what is the in that moment, two people are coming towards you, what is the feeling that takes hold? How does
Well, I haven't felt that in a long time because
mm,
once I figured that stuff out and figured out my true gifts, the ability to go in and rewire my brain and my nervous system, I don't get that anymore when I'm
mhm,
in that moment. But in that day, it was panic. It was panic, and there was nothing I could do but get out of there.
and if that were to
Nowadays,
happen again today,
mhm,
like you are in the same supermarket, one person coming from one side, one
mhm.
person coming from the other side, like are you just is your baseline regulation better, or do you have a
my
different
base,
technique of dealing with?
yes, my baseline regulation is so much better than it was back in the day. But I still sometimes I open myself up too much and feel. So when I catch myself, I'll find my breath and excuse myself. I won't stay there. Now, if you were looking at me, you would see the anger and rage come over my face because I don't have a ability to put on a mask. You know when I'm jacked up,
Mhm.
but I'll excuse myself. Okay, there's no. I don't have a tendency to outburst anymore. But back in the day, I wouldn't outburst to the people that I didn't know. I would outburst to the people that were close to me, which
Mhm.
sucked. It wasn't fair.
Right.
Yeah.
So is that in a way you trusting them with your true self or your emotions, or what was it that made it possible to explode around the people that you were close
I
to?
wouldn't say it was trust, because my explosion was geared towards them. Even though knowing now what I know now, it was everything that I didn't have control over coming out towards them. And I've had to apologize, had to forgive them and myself. And once I learned how to forgive, that was a huge day for me. That was only a year ago.
Yeah, I imagine. And so, would you tell me a little bit about what you? I see the TV behind you. I've seen some of your content. What is your? Where does your passion lie these days?
My passion is helping people find their balance and teach them how to heal themselves, just like we taught you at the beginning of the podcast today. And we all have that ability. We don't need other people to do it for us, but we have forgotten how to do it, especially when our brain is so miswired. I describe it kind of like when you turn on a light switch. The electricity goes from the switch to the light. In a brain who's been damaged or is not typical, that electricity all of a sudden goes to the neighbor's house and around the country and then back to the light. So we cut out all that extra wiring so we can get back directly to the light again.
And what modality do you use for doing that work?
All of them.
All of them. Great.
I've been practicing for 23 years. I started a massage therapist. I had no idea what I was doing. I'd never even had a massage before. I was just running from my demons. And my idea was, I'm going to get on a cruise line and just go. And things started changing for me just in massage school. I mean, I say just in massage school, but it was profound for me. So I ended up opening up my own business a year and a half later after graduating and working in a few other places. But that was the beginning of where I am today. And that's part of my transition. So from massage therapy school, where I learned a lot of modalities, to the Rolf Institute, to finally figuring out how to muscle test and using frequency and knowing that all the frequencies they put in lasers and everything are available for us all the time. So we could actually muscle test and find the exact frequency that we could connect to right here in this moment that would help both of us downregulate even more, so we can have a even more fluid conversation. So gifts I was given when I was born, I believe, but were shut down because my parents didn't know how to support that. I'm able to connect right into the frequencies that are out of balance with you or anyone who is open to allowing me to do it. Very important. And change them almost instantaneously.
So you're saying doubt is a powerful shield against being helped.
Doubt is anything negative is a powerful shield against being helped. Yeah.
Yeah. And so how do you typically work with people? Is this in person? Is it seminars? Is it over Zoom? Is it?
Over Zoom is typical. I am getting geared up. I believe I'm ready to actually begin writing classes where I can have weekend classes, because when I do work one-on-one with you, the information comes very quickly, and it can be overwhelming in the fact it's hard to learn it. But with every person that I work with, we do teach the tapping or the 4-point technique that you learned. So that gives you a baseline to begin. And as you continue clearing out your imbalances, your triggers, your buttons, as they called them today on the video, it gets easier to figure out and learn the chakras, the meridians, your physical body, because most people have no idea what's going on inside of their skin.
Right.
But with the tapping, you can actually look at a picture of an organ or a system and tap until you stop flipping out about what you see.
I love that. It's for a long time I felt like, I'm going to borrow a friend's words here because they fit really well. I feel like I'm just a giant blue aformous intelligence that floats around.
Yeah.
And basically I wasn't really aware I had a body. Like my brain was so disconnected from everything else that was happening in me. And I think that speaks to alexithymia, that speaks to a lack of interoception, it speaks to lots of things that are typically associated with autism. But the only time I was ever able to really tap into my body was in the erotic realm. And that makes sense, right? It's like if you're in your head and exploring sexuality, that doesn't work, or it doesn't work for me anyway. But what I've much more recently started opening up to is like, oh, my body exists even when I'm not using it for pleasure. And so I'm hearing you say connecting with your body and connecting with your chakras and your meridians and whatnot. And I'm like I didn't know that stuff existed. Like purely like academically, yes, but as a felt sensation, no. How would you even start to work with somebody who has absolutely no idea how any of this, like I have no real felt experience of it as far as I'm aware.
Right. Well, I use muscle testing, and muscle testing is a way for me to make sure I'm working with where their energy is at. And if I muscle test and I get chakras, I'll actually put pictures of the chakras up. And they might not have any idea about them, but realizing that chakras are also related to things that we know. For instance, the root chakra, they say, holds fear. And if I say that word fear and, oh, yeah. Okay, that gives us something to work into. But they might not have fear. They might have pelvic floor issues or addiction to erotica or whatever, which can be an imbalance in the root or second chakra, or all of them for that matter, because the chakras are all interconnected to each other.
Yeah.
Same as the meridians. It's all energy. And when we allow ourselves to realize when I'm working with the chakras, I'm not just working with this one little thing right here. I'm working with me as a whole on the physical, mental, emotional, energetic, and spiritual level.
When you say muscle test, the thing that springs into my mind is like a lot of wires and machinery, but I don't think that's what you're saying. What is a muscle test and how does that work?
So back in the day, I ended up getting this low-level laser, and I was using it for healing. And they talked a little bit about you can test points on the body to see if it needs help. And I would use the client's leg length at the time because I was working one-on-one with people in my office. And that's what I learned from my chiropractor way back in the day. He would check my leg length, know which vertebrae to adjust, and that feels better. So one day I was fiddling around with a client, right? Always learning. And I touched their pelvis and their legs came out of alignment. Like, oh, this is interesting. So I had a percussor and I put the percussor on their pelvis and it released a whole lot of energy and their legs didn't come out of alignment anymore. When I touched their hip, it's like, holy cow. So that was my first introduction to muscle testing. And as I got more clarity in myself, and I ended up taking this other class where they tested the muscles of the body to find compensations, I started to realize I can actually test myself in relation to my client because that's my gift of connecting to that energy. And now with the clarity that I have, sometimes I don't even have to get a yes or a no. I can just feel that shift, kind of like at the beginning of our session today, and know, okay, this is what we need to work on. This is how we need to do it. This is what we need to discuss while we're doing it so that they get a conscious shift while we're releasing that subconscious shift so that they consciously can make this new pattern as well. And in a nutshell, that is how I muscle test.
And how would you do something like that over Zoom?
The same way that we did at the beginning of the session today. I watch your body. I listen to what your energy is telling me. And I listen to your words. Hey, Kim, that messed me up. What can we do?
Yeah.
So, and because energy is constant. just like time, right? We can go backwards in time and remember a moment when I ate a lemon. If you've never had a lemon before, then okay, how about an apple, or how about an awesome piece of candy? Think of that moment, and all of a sudden we're back in time. Now, if there's negative emotional attachment to that, well, why don't we clear that negative emotional attachment? Because maybe you remembered a time when you were eating an onion or cutting an onion and you had a little cut on your hand. Oh, that stings. And now you can feel that cut all of a sudden, can't you? Well, let's release that. That way in the future, when you go and cut a lemon, we're not attached to that moment when it really hurt. We're just attached to this moment right here and now. And this is the only moment that matters. Whereas a lot of times when we are dysregulated, we're always looking for what happened yesterday that I have to be prepared for tomorrow, right, instead of being in this moment and knowing, okay, this is happening. I can find my breath. I can rub on my spot. And hey, how about I move my toes a little bit and bring my energy down into my feet instead of staying up in my head? And that in itself is huge.
Yeah. In your description of the cut and the kind of bodily responses and stuff, that sounds a lot to me like CPTSD, complex PTSD symptoms. Is that in part what you're talking about, or is this something different?
Quite possibly. But I find when we put labels to something like a diagnosis, it gets us stuck in this little box here. And we don't see all of the other possibilities in relation to what is happening. So while a client may very well give me a diagnosis, we're still looking for the root source. And the root source may be way earlier than we even thought. Because as we said earlier, time is constant all the way back. So it might have been that very moment that you were conceived. It might have been things that you learned in utero, and it might be genetic or possibly even past life stuff. No matter how weird it sounds, I didn't believe in past life until last year, and I was doing some hypnosis training, and they had a past life regressionist come on, and so I'm like, okay, I'll try this out. Close my eyes, and she takes us through, and all of a sudden I see myself. I look down, and I've got sandals on, and I'm a Chinese man on the Great Wall of China standing guard. I'm like, what in the heck is going on? And that man was depressed his entire life. And I too had been depressed most of my life. And I'm like, well, if this is true and this is really happening and this is me, I'm going to do a little selfish work right now, and I'm going to help this guy. And so I went back in time and I helped him heal that depression, and I felt a weight lift off of my shoulders. I'm like, okay, this is really happening. And now that's one of my tests. When did this root cause begin? Was it before, during, or after your birth? After your birth, meaning usually the age 0 to 7, because we are just sponges at that time in our life. We learn everything. Now, it's not to say something traumatic didn't happen after 7. Definitely we work on other stuff. But if the root cause was, say, 3 years old, we can connect that root cause and connect everything related to that moment all the way until now and cut it all off, and everything instantaneous. It's crazy how fast it changes. It's wonderful.
No kidding. I'm finding myself in this really weird place right now where part of me is a science-forward skeptic, and part of me is like, I have experienced too many things that are otherworldly or extra, like cannot be explained by science, to sit here with a straight face and go, I'm a man of science.
Yeah.
And so that's, I've also, as I mentioned on a previous episode of the podcast, I've been listening to the telepathy tapes, and it fucked me up because a lot of the things they talk about there on the podcast is about telepathy. It's about mind reading. It's about having connections that cannot be explained in any easy way. And as I was listening to that, I had all these memories come back from stuff I've experienced where I was like, okay, well, that disappeared out of my mind because people told me it was impossible, right? And so the external world is like, no, that isn't possible. And I'm like, okay, I guess that didn't happen to me then if it isn't possible. And kind of gaslighting yourself into not believing yourself, which is a whole separate podcast, I think.
Yeah.
But I'm I'm sitting here with this really strong sense of cognitive dissonance where I know that, well, at the base level, I know that you believe that what you're saying is true. The next layer is like, I think I believe what you're saying is true. But for that to be true, a lot of the things I know are true can't be true.
Mm-hmm.
And this is, of course, me being very in my head in this moment rather than
Yeah.
trusting my felt experience. But I can't imagine that is I can't be a unique person who comes to you and says, hey, this feels weird. And I like intuitively, I am drawn to it because it kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
But non-intuitively, I'm like my brain doesn't
no.
tap into this. I don't know if there's a question in there, but
Well, I'll give you an example.
What would you say to me?
I totally understand, because when I went to the Rolf Institute, one of my instructors, John Shuey, he was awesome. He was my anatomy instructor. And he said there's a Rolfer. He sits in the corner of his room and he looks at people, and then they stand up and he never touches them. And they stand up and they feel better. I'm like, bull crap, right? Because Rolfing's, you're moving the fascia and it's a physical process, and now I'm the weird guy on the other side of a computer screen helping people feel better. Is it hard to trust and understand? Yeah, it is. But that's why I'm grateful that Joe Dispenza is doing the work that he's doing, because he's scientifically proving that people are changing their bodies and their minds and healing themselves with their own meditation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And even in the face of like very hard science, there's no drug trial that they can't do without a placebo test. And at the very basic level, that sometimes people get lots better on either the placebo or the non-placebo. It's like, well, there's something here, right? And to this day, science is like, well, we have to test for this thing, but we can't explain it. And I'm like, okay, well, that's odd. You've known about this for 100 years. When are we going to figure out what this placebo effect actually is, guys?
It's magic.
Well, and this is the thing. We know placebo works. Mm-hmm. And I have spoken to so many people who know that energy works. And I have experienced, like, I have received Reiki over Zoom, which to me feels completely nuts. Like, if somebody's like near me and doing the thing, I'm like, sure, I can get that. But over Zoom, and still it works, right? And so...
Well, you experienced it today.
Yeah. Precisely.
And remember, Reiki is everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need to connect with me or anybody to experience Reiki. You can literally give yourself permission right now to open yourself up to the Reiki that's all around you, to that plant that's behind you, all the information in those books. And here, I don't know about you, but I feel the tingling just in the excitement of, you know what? I can connect to the universal energy that's all around me. That was put here by who knows who, that is ready to help us heal at any given moment in time.
Yeah. The plants you just noticed are peace lilies. And I was given the first one very soon after I was divorced. And my sister sent it to me, had it delivered. She lived in Australia. She had it delivered to me. She ordered it from somewhere. And now this plant, I have split so many times. There's probably a couple of hundred of them around the world that I've given to people, that I have a whole wall of these peace lilies. And every time I get to resplit it and make another peace lily out of it, it's a spiritual process. It is a reminder that this one plant that my sisters sent me gets to live and gets to live here in energy and in support to me. And that's why it's in my videos. I think it's really important that energy gets to be in the room. And even in saying that, it's not a plant that's sitting behind me. It's the energy of the plant that's important. So clearly there's some belief in there somewhere.
And the energy of the plant that you have spread around the world. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Quite a few of my friends have cuttings of that peace lily, and it blooms incredibly often. And I'm like, okay, hello, sister. Thank you for showing up. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
I am curious more about your journey. Like, You mentioned briefly that you were like, you went from never having received a massage to going to massage school. And I feel like that is not something people generally do. What drove you in that moment to take like I don't know what you did before that, but it sounds like that was a bit of a turn in the road for you.
Yeah. Well, I had done a lot of things, from waiting tables at Applebee's to cleaning horse corrals to working graveyard shift at Rayleigh's stocking shelves, which was awesome because the snow season that year was insane. um, and I had been working on a gas crew line, putting in gas line, and winter was coming, and I'm like, I don't want to be doing this in winter, and I'm overdoing this, so I'm going to go be a ski bum in Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
And while I was there, I had multiple more head injuries, broken collarbone twice.
Was this skiing
Same
injuries
one.
or something else happened?
Snowboarding
Yep.
injuries. Yep. And it's funny because the first time I broke my collarbone, I called my chiropractor back here at home, and I'm like, "Hey, what should I do?" He's like, "Just go to the doctor, get an X-ray, and get painkillers because there's nothing you can do for it."
Mm-hmm.
And so I didn't take all the painkillers because painkillers just destroy me. So I only took what I needed. And I asked the doctor, "Hey, when can I go back?" The doctor said, "Give it about a month." So I went back to snowboarding about a month to the day, went to the half pipe and broke it again. Didn't go to the hospital because I still had painkillers. So I just took care of it. And actually got arrested in Colorado for distribution of cocaine, which I've never done cocaine. I wasn't distributing it. I just got it for a girl who was hitting on me, thinking I could get lucky. And she was an undercover police officer. But I'm very glad that it happened because I was going to try cocaine, because everybody in Colorado at the time, still I believe, does cocaine.
Well, they're big on snow, I hear.
They are big on snow. And I loved Red Bull back in the day, so if I had tried cocaine, I might not have come back. So it was a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
She didn't have to try to get me twice, but it was a good thing. She didn't get me the second time. I wasn't doing anything wrong. But one of the guys I was living with, we lived in a house with 6 other people. Another story to that, every single one of those people had all been bailed out by the same bail bondsman. So it was a cursed house. But one of the guys I lived with, his brother came up and stayed with us for about a month. And while he was up there, one of his roommates moved out. And I said, "Well, I've never lived in Arizona. I'll go down there." So I had the place that I worked for, the construction company I worked for before up here, they were based out of Arizona. So I called him up and, "Hey, I'm coming down. You got a job?" He's like, "Oh yeah, we'll hook you up." And I got down there a couple weeks before I moved down to take some stuff down. I called him up. "Hey, I'll be here in 2 weeks." He's like, "We don't have an opening for you, and it's harder than hell here. Go do something else." So I opened up the phone book, opened up the massage school, dialed up the first one, signed up that day. I had experience with personal training back in the day, and it just felt right. So that's my story of how I ended up there.
I mean, it's rare that getting busted with drugs by the police turns out to be a good thing. And it's rare that somebody moves, I don't know how long it takes to drive down, but turns up and says, "I don't have a job," and then grabs a phone book and says, "Okay, I guess I'm not building houses, I'm doing massage school."
I was in a dirty tank top I'd been wearing for 2 days, hadn't shaved in a week, and I walk into this massage school and sign up for class.
What was the emotional moment for you in that moment?
I was not connected to emotion at that time in my life. I think I was led. I think divine intervention happened because my mom had committed suicide a couple years before, and emotionally there was nothing. Yeah. So, and I never grieved for her. I cried a little bit when we spread her ashes in the day that I heard she died, but that was it. And one of my classmates in school, she ended up getting in a car accident and dying while we were in class. And so we went to her funeral, And that was actually the day that I started crying, because actually I think I felt my mom tap me on my shoulder. And I'm like,
Right.
whoop, here we go. So.
Yeah. I feel like humans are extraordinary at saying to themselves, no, not now, and shoving that emotion down.
Yeah.
And, the body keeps the score and it keeps the tears. So they'll be there waiting for you.
Yeah.
And I feel like for men, that often comes out as rage. And I keep saying this in various podcast episodes, but I feel like that's the one acceptable emotion for a certain generation of male-bodied people. And I think it's a powerful thing for you to have recognized that, hey, maybe massage school is a way to find... Like, did you feel like you were searching for something? Or were you just like...
I was running.
Running?
I was running. Yep.
From or
I've been
towards
running
something?
my entire life, and it was just another way for me to run and get on a cruise line and not connect to anything.
Do you feel like you were running from something, or were you running towards something?
Oh yeah, my demons.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there was I always get them mixed up, but they're Irons brothers. They're professional surfers, and Andy Irons died, I believe. I hope I'm not getting this wrong. But I watched a video of him right after his death, and he said, I surf the way I do to calm the demons. And I'm like, that's why I do everything that I do. That's why I fly down the mountain with my hair on fire and do stupid crap to keep the demons at bay. So I started writing a story to myself about the things that I'd experienced in massage, or since becoming a massage therapist. And all of a sudden my head started hurting. I had a headache. My shoulders hurt. I started reading it back to myself, and I was just bitching and complaining about everything. Like, So I started tapping while I read it back to myself. Headache went away. Back pain went away. Felt lighter. I'm like, oh, this part of my story doesn't matter. Let's think about the good stuff. So.
And so you didn't outrun your demons. You just invited them to go do one.
I acknowledged them. Mm-hmm. And allowed them to release.
Where does that energy go? Or does it not matter? Just out?
Doesn't matter. I believe it goes out, changes into something beautiful.
Mm.
But if my energy leaves, for instance, when I'm working with a client and they're releasing something that I haven't dealt with yet, I can feel it spooling up within myself. Mm-hmm. So I'll join along and be tapping with them, but I'll also ask them, hey, let's release this out our windows and let nature change it into something. Snow, rain, a rock, a tree, another peace lily from your cutting.
Yeah. Do you feel like your work is ever done? Or is there still stuff that keeps coming up where you're like,
oh yeah, there's stuff that comes up, although it's not as huge as it was back in the day. For instance, when I really started learning about the chakras and the meridians, and the fact that I could balance my cranial bones in relation to everything, because these bones actually move, and they come as you stated earlier. We know how to shove things down. Well, we know how to compensate tremendously. Mm-hmm. And we can compensate in the bones and the muscles and the organs with our emotions. And anger can be a compensation for sadness and fear and all that kind of stuff.
Do you feel like your work is ever done?
When I first started when I really started getting into it, I would be in my little shop behind my house for an hour and a half, 2 hours at a time, tapping, listening to the exact same audio, which is good for us, right? Gives us support, but it was a very supportive audio. Actually, it's the audio that's on my website. And I would tap with it for an hour and a half, 2 hours at a time, lighting sage to clear the air, and the smoke from the sage at the time was just disgusting. It wasn't nice. I'm clearing stuff. It was brown and dark and smelt disgusting. And I would open the doors. I put a slider on one side and French doors on the other, and the smoke would just go billowing out. I'd be tapping while I was breathing through my t-shirt so I could breathe. But that was 6 months, an hour and a half, 2 hours every single day. Now, for some people, they say, well, how long do I have to tap? Well, if you have to do anything, you're failing. right? How long do you brush your teeth for? Do you brush your teeth twice a day, right? Hey, let's tap twice a day. I'm not saying everybody's set up to do an hour and a half or 2 hours a day, but at least tap for a few minutes a day. Give yourself that love so that you can release your day and then tap in the morning as soon as you wake up. It's kind of like they say, meditate in the morning. Just because you're tapping doesn't mean you're not meditating, because meditating is bringing yourself to center. And if you tap, center is going to come that much faster because you're going to acknowledge the demons or the subconscious limiting beliefs or whatever's going on in your head and allow them to go so you can start your day on a positive note instead of tweaking out like we have a tendency to do.
I have so many questions. For readers who don't know what tapping is, like what is the theory and what is the felt experience?
Yeah. So the theory is you're tapping on these meridian points, right? Chinese medicine. So it's like you're giving yourself acupuncture, but without the needles. Most important thing is setting the intention, right? Because like we stated earlier, if you don't give yourself permission to heal, if you don't believe you can heal, well, you're just going to be tapping on your face looking like a goofball. But when you set the intention to heal and to release and also to learn, right? When we've been stuck in a negative pathway for a long time, when somebody says, why can't you just be happy? You'll be like, I don't even know what happy is unless I'm flying down a mountain with my hair on fire. That's happy. And so when we tap on these 14 points, and I tap on 14 points because that's what I was taught. Company like the tapping solution, they only tap on the face and the chest and the side of the chest. And that's fine. There's no wrong way to do anything. It's just this is the way I was taught, and it works wonderfully for me. And I believe we need to address all 14 meridian points. So when we're tapping on these points and talking about the things we want to change, like I would love to never dysregulate again. I've never even said that before. That would be an amazing thing, right? And if you want to join along, you can join along with me. I would love to never dysregulate again. I would love to maintain my groundedness, my support within my body. I would love to be happy 24 hours a day. Not superficially happy, but just unreasonably happy, like happy for no reason. And that's one thing I got from the book called The Peaceful Warrior by Dan Millman. Unreasonable happiness, just happy. And that's what I've achieved lately. It's really nice. Do I not have stress? Yeah, I still have stress. I am wondering how to grow my business so that money isn't an issue. Do I want to be a millionaire? I don't think so. I want enough to not have to worry. And I can do this work forever. I'm happy doing this work forever. If I win the lottery, I would do this work for free. I'm sorry. When I win the lottery, I would do this work for free because people need it, especially children. I love, for some reason that just brought a tear in my eye. Now remember, when we're tapping, we're also talking to the subconscious, and the subconscious is the inner child. And how much crap is our inner child holding on to that is preventing us from being an adult and not unregulating, right? I give myself permission to release any and every experience that I am open and available to releasing that I no longer need right now. Although I can still hold on to the knowledge and the wisdom from that moment in time, I can literally release that right now. Now, as you're noticing, I'm just talking from the hip, whatever comes to my mind. Back in the day, I wouldn't have been able to do that because I didn't have the confidence to just say whatever, and I didn't even know what to say. Right. So the tapping solution, they've got great books to get you started. I also recommend, you go on YouTube and you find a motivational video and you just tap while you listen along to it. I did it this morning because I was stuck and I'm like, I gotta get the video going. I've got getting an app together. I've got all kinds of stuff to do, but I just want to curl up in front of the TV and just watch stupid movies again. I turned on the video, did some tapping. 15 minutes later, boom, pumped out a video. I'm like, that was so much better.
Yeah.
So it's a powerful way to help. Now the tapping protocol is on my website. It's a free download, and tapping is free for everybody, but you might need some help in the deeper, darker stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so when you're tapping, I was trying to track along with you,
Mm-hmm.
and for the people who are just listening to this and have no idea what just happened.
Right.
So Kim tapped on his head. I saw your kind of eyebrow. I saw your cheek. I saw the top
Mm-hmm.
of your lip, the bottom of your lip, your chest. Like, what does the tapping do to you? Like, what is your felt experience of the tapping?
Yeah. When I say something, right, that resonates, that's true, or I feel, or my body begins to release, I get tingling sensations. When I first started doing back in the day, I would yawn. I would look like a horse yawning. Sometimes it would be painful because my jaw couldn't open anymore. I was yawning so big. Sometimes we'll tear up. Sometimes we'll laugh. Every single person's experience can be different. When we're starting, when you've been shut down for a long time, you might not notice the changes. So when I'm working with you, I'll bring to your awareness the changes that you are actually feeling, because I can feel how your body's processing. Oh, you notice that softness that just came over your belly? Can I say something I'm noticing with you all of a sudden?
Please.
With the stuff that I just said, all of a sudden you're swallowing quite a bit. Mm-hmm. And your mouth kind of dried up a little bit?
Yeah.
So let's do yourself a favor and go ahead and rub on that hand. And then bring your breath back to your chair. And we don't have to breathe big. It's just an awareness of our breath. And then go ahead and move your toes and bring your energy way down, because some of the things that I said might have sparked some triggers that you're holding on to. And unfortunately, they weren't released. And now, I feel myself spiraling a little bit. We don't want to do that. We've had a wonderful conversation. So as we're rubbing on that hand between the thumb and index finger, and of course we're not poking or prodding like we have been taught. We're simply just rubbing, setting the intention to talk to my subconscious. Hey, everything's okay. I'm able to breathe. I'm here on my own. We're in a great environment. I feel safe. Go ahead and say that one out loud. I feel safe.
I feel good. I feel safe.
There you go. Notice the chest tightened up a little bit when you said safe. Mm-hmm. That one's a hard one for you to swallow. So I would say that a few more times and think of your safe place and bring that safe place to you. There you go. That feels better.
I feel like thank you for that.
You're welcome. Thanks for letting me help you.
Yeah. I appreciate you noticing. And the reason I say that is that I often don't notice until I'm so far down the spiral that it takes an earth mover to get me back out. Right. I'm like, let's get the construction equipment out. And as I'm saying that, I'm noticing that I'm saying that as if that is a truth about me.
Mm-hmm. That is a truth about you?
Yeah. Or I'm saying it as if that is a truth about me.
Mm-hmm.
And I neither want it to be,
right,
nor really believe that.
Yeah.
And so I really believe in the power of words. Mm-hmm. And in like instantiating and calling things in. And in this moment, like that feels like an unkindness to bring forward.
But it's true. So we want to address the truth and then give ourselves permission to release the truth, because the truth doesn't serve you anymore. It's not to say that you won't need an earth mover tomorrow, because there might be some things that come up. But maybe it won't be such a big earth mover. Maybe you only need a smaller one. And
a little ditch digger.
Exactly, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So, entirely selfishly, I'm just going to ask the question.
Please.
I don't know if any readers will or any listeners will care, but here we go. Where do you begin? Like, how do you learn to catch yourself earlier?
By doing what we did today, right? Acknowledging, why am I swallowing so much? Why are my eyes blinking? Why do I feel so uncomfortable in my chair all of a sudden? Or why are my clothes irritating the crap out of me? Right? It's like people say that they're allergic to grass.
Mm-hmm.
What if they're allergic to that much sensation? And it's not even they're allergic to it, that it's overwhelming and overstimulating. For instance, back in the day when I would be overstimulated, I would actually take off as many clothes as I can in my backyard, lay down in the grass and start tapping and let that stimulation pull it out of me. And that's one thing that I learned from a class called restorative breathing. They put one of those little squish balls in your hands that had all the tentacles on it. Oh my gosh, I freaked out. That is way too much information for me. Now, if I hold it and don't pay attention to it, it's fine. But once I bring that attention to it, it's like people walking down the hallway. But of course, in that class, when they had us do the happy dance, they had us put our hands on our head and touch our hand to our opposite knee. I literally had to look down to see where my knee was because I was so disorganized in my brain from everything I was holding on to. But by the end of the weekend, we're dancing in the streets doing the happy dance. I'm like, this is amazing.
Yeah, and I think you just touched on something really interesting, which is proprioception, right? The sense that you know where you are in space and where your different body parts are in relation to each other.
Yeah.
Often a challenge for autistic folks. And I notice that most of the time, my proprioception is pretty decent. I'm decent at sports. I'm decent at all that kind of stuff. When I'm poorly regulated, I get real clumsy. Real clumsy.
Me too. Like sucks.
I have bruises all over me because I'm not very well regulated right now. And I keep smacking into stuff and I'm like, it's not that I'm not paying attention. I literally just don't know where my various body parts are in space. And so I want to give myself a little bit of grace for that and realize that is a thing. But I also know that I can avoid that by being better resourced or by being more centered, being more balanced. I don't even know what the word is there.
Yeah. Grounded, present, here, now, in the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
I think that's one reason why I enjoyed playing 2-man volleyball and not 6-man. 6-man, there's too much going on. 2-man, I only got to think about you and me.
Right.
And that's it.
It's funny you mentioned that. My dad and I used to play beach volleyball style against a whole team of volleyball players, and we had a lot of fun with that.
I used to love playing by myself. Hey, who wants to play? We only got 3 people. I'm fine. Just hit me over here. We're good.
Let's go.
Just give me 3 hits. We're golden.
That's fun. That's super fun. What is next for you? What is the logical, I don't want to say logical conclusion because that makes things very final. What is your North Star? Which is the direction you want to move with your life and your work?
Well, my work is constantly evolving. The more I learn, the more detailed I can be. Right now, I am focused on this moment and being here for my daughter. And then after my daughter graduates, then things are going to shift. I would love, my goal right now is to start attracting athletes who have been injured and want to get, not only been injured, well, all athletes have been injured, right? If you're athletic, you've been injured, and every injury builds up and takes a step off, facilitates some pain, makes you disappointed, and that disappointment facilitates more pain and more disconnect.
Right.
So that's my goal because, truthfully, athletes are invested in their health, whereas people who are just sick, not always willing to make the changes that are necessary in order to not be sick, which is one reason why I lost my hair. I felt like I was more invested than they were. It was very stressful for me back in the day. So
I thought it was because you were going down the slopes with your hair on fire and there is none left.
Well, the excessive bleaching back in the day didn't help either.
Fair.
Got to look like Eminem.
Sure. No comment. I've had blue hair. I know how it goes. And so I'm hearing you wanting to work with athletes. What is driving you in that direction?
I love seeing when any person when their body is moving the way that they want it to, it's exciting for me. And if I could, when I can sit on a beach and watch my clients out there on their board, ripping the waves and the smiles on their faces and just being calm and at peace and at zen, because I know back in the day, the first time I went surfing, they always talked, oh, surfing is such a zen sport. I was furious. I couldn't catch these waves. This is stupid.
Right.
Whereas the last time I went surfing, and remember, I surf, but I'm not a surfer because I suck. But the last time I went out there, it's like I caught the first 3 waves and I'm like, wow, this is awesome. And I hadn't even trained for it or anything. I just caught the waves. It was easy. My body's working. And if I'm not catching waves, well, it's just nice sitting out here. This is awesome. Thank you for doing the work that you've done, because this is so much better than it was back in the day. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have a goal for the work that you do with yourself at the moment? Or is it an everlasting?
Yeah, it's everlasting, to always be better.
Yeah.
And as much as possible not get dysregulated. It still happens, but I'll use a weighted blanket when I get home as soon as it happens. Unfortunately, my daughter's, I'm assuming on the spectrum, but she's very empathic as well. And so when we are together and we both get dysregulated, it's pretty rough on both of us. So we do our best to help each other out as much as possible. But she's been tapping with me since she was 6 months old. I would tap with her every single night over her crib, and 6 months old, she starts tapping with me. I'm like, oh my gosh. So back in the day, I would read to her every night. And this was a huge aha for how jacked up my brain was. When I would read with her, if I was really stressed, I couldn't see the book and I would fumble my words. So when I'd fumble my words, I'd get stressed out and put my hand on my head, and it would get even worse. I'm like, what is going on? So I started looking into that. And so I incorporated tapping with it, of course, with everything else that I did for my brain. But we would have competitions after a while with the book, the Dr. Seuss book, Fox and Socks, to see how fast we could read it without fumbling all the words. And it's like, wow, this is really cool.
That's amazing. I love that. Kim, thank you so much for spending this time with me. I hope our listeners really got some enjoyment and learning out of this as well. There's 2 questions that I really like to end with. And the first one is, what do you wish neurotypical people knew about neurospicy folks?
I have no idea. Because, yeah, I don't know.
May I update the question?
Yes, please.
What do you wish muggles knew about energy?
One thing that I wish that neurodivergent people knew about themselves is that they can release their past, their emotional attachment to the past, so that they can self-regulate better. Because then when we self-regulate better, we don't necessarily have to have the mask, because we can find our confidence to be the freaking goofballs, I'm talking to myself, goofballs that we are, the real people that we are. And that's what's brought me out of my shell and put me on TikTok. Hey, this is me. This is what I have to offer. And if you don't like it, that's okay. You can travel on. But don't keep talking crap in my chat here, or else I'm just going to block you. But I also got better at, hey, you know what? I don't need to block you right away. Let's chat. And then if you get harsh, okay, we're out of here. But so that was a huge growth process for me for last year as well. I'm like, I handled that one pretty well. The guy was a jerk off, and I didn't flip out.
Yeah. The way I've come to, I've seen you do that actually, and I think you do that really beautifully.
Thank you.
It shows, and I think it sets an example for a different way of being online, which I think is actually really helpful. The way I engage with people who leave comments, I'm like, if you're just here to be a jerk, I'm not even going to try. Delete. But there are people who show up even clumsily with a desire to learn, or even in their comment, they're not mean-spirited, they're just ill-informed, or maybe I'm missing something, right? And those are fun for me, where I'm like, hey, if we're both showing up with curiosity, and like I always describe myself as pathologically curious. Like I'm there, right? I want to learn all the things. If people show up with curiosity, I have a lot of patience for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And the second standard question that I'd love to ask you is, can you tell me of a way where you were seen and loved exactly the way you needed to be seen and loved?
Apparently, I'm going to need to work on that one. I'm going to jot that one down, because that one brings some tears to my eyes. So apparently that has not either, I have not connected, I've never felt like I was, or it happened and I did not know it was happening because of my blocks to being seen and loved. So thanks for that question. That one was a big one.
Would you say something about the tears?
The tears to me is just I'm feeling, the tears are like I'm disconnected from knowing. And so when we get off the call today, I'll ask myself that question again, and then ask myself, when did this blockage come up, and go through that clearing so that I can see all those times, because there's been a lot of times, I'm starting to see them now, but I didn't accept it because I'm really good at pushing people away, because it's hard for me to be around people. When I'm around people who are genuinely happy, it's much easier. But what happens when the beers come out? The truth starts coming out, and then all of a sudden I'm shutting down. It's like, so protecting myself has been a big deal for most of my life, which prevents me from seeing all that good stuff as well.
I want to thank you for the way you answered that question. I think that is a really beautiful way to not pretend to come up with an answer, not to fall into a shame spiral, not beat yourself up about it. I saw you in real time go, well, here's a piece of work I can look at. Yeah. And that is beautiful. I find myself with a little wave of envy, because that is not usually how I react. I go straight to like, oh shit, why don't you know the answer? Why aren't you better? Why are you a terrible human? And then you're like 3 spirals down the spiral. Like, oh
yeah, been there, done that.
Totally. But yeah, I just want to thank you. That was really beautiful.
I appreciate that. Thank you. This was a time when I felt like I was truly loved.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for joining me. This was an absolute delight. I can't wait to share this with our listeners.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of the podcast. You can find us on TikTok at Autistic FM, on Instagram at autistic_FM, and on the web at autistic.fm. On the website, you can subscribe for free, so you can join in the discussion about each episode, and you can get notified whenever we release new episodes, and you can suggest future guests. You can also become a supporter for as little as $5 a month. When you do that, you can suggest topics for the podcast and submit questions for our future guests. This podcast is produced and hosted by me, Haje Kamps. It's been absolutely delightful to have you here with me. As I promised, I have a special fact. Did you know that bananas are technically classified as berries in the botanical sense? Because they develop from a single flower with one ovary, and their seeds are embedded in the fleshy interior, even if those seeds have been bred into near insignificance in most commercial varieties of banana. Of course, we don't commonly refer to bananas as berries, but, that's what they are. Because of that definition, actually, it turns out strawberries are not berries, because the seeds are on the outside of the berry and not in the fleshy middle. Anyway, I love this kind of stuff, and I would love it if you started sharing some interesting facts with me as well. Use the forums for that, and maybe I'll use your fact in a future podcast episode. Until then, Have a beautiful day.